Hey, it's Santacroce, and you're listening to the 360 Entrepreneur with Jan Ilunga.
This is episode 221, and today's session is all about leveraging LinkedIn and unlocking its power for your business. Here we go.
Welcome to the 360 Entrepreneur Podcast, the show for entrepreneurs and small business owners who dream big and want to do bigger. Join some of the world's top entrepreneurs, internet marketers, and best-selling authors as they share their inspiring stories, their struggles, and give actionable tips that will help you build, grow, and promote your online business. Here's your host, Yanni Lunga.
Hey, how's it going? Welcome to a new episode of the 360 Entrepreneur Podcast, and this one is all about LinkedIn. If up until now you've thought of LinkedIn as an online CV kind of a thing, you are missing out big time. And today's guest expert, Sarah Santacroce, is gonna tell you why LinkedIn is a social media platform you can't overlook if you're a business owner. I am really excited about this interview because we go all the way to Switzerland, where Sarah is based at. But before we do that, a quick reminder, the show notes page for today's episode, you find them over at yanilunga.com/episode 221. Okay, are you ready to dive into the world of LinkedIn? Great, here's the interview with Sarah Santacroce from simplicitysmallbiz.com. I'm really excited about who is joining us here today on the 360 Entrepreneur Podcast. She's an introvert, LinkedIn expert, and podcaster. She's the host of the Introvert Biz Growth Podcast, a show that features and helps introverts grow their business. As I said, she's also a LinkedIn expert who helps businesses and entrepreneurs get clients on LinkedIn, and she does so on her site, simplicitysmallbiz.com. I'm so excited to welcome on the show Sarah Santacroce. Sarah, come va?
Bene, grazie, ciao, Jan. So nice to have somebody pronounce my last name correctly.
Yeah, well, I know it has some Italian roots, and I had to greet you in Italian because I remember you told me that you had studied a little bit of Italian, right?
I'm actually quite fluent, so we can do this in Italian if you want.
Oh, okay, sounds good. Well, I don't know how interesting and useful it would be for people tuning in, but
it would turn into a language learning show, I guess. So let's not do that.
That's true. Well, it's interesting that you speak several languages, and you know why I'm really excited about this? Because if I remember correctly, you are the first Swiss person I interview, which is awesome. I got to interview Ashley Folks from Mad Lemmings a while ago, who is based in Switzerland, but is from Australia. But I know you are from our capital, Bern, and now you live in the French-speaking part. So, like me, you speak quite many different languages, right?
I do, yes. I always say as Swiss, we don't really have a choice because first of all, we have 4 languages officially, and then nobody speaks Swiss German, so we have to adapt to everybody else.
Yeah, that's exactly the same thing I say when people are like, oh, wow, you speak so many languages. I'm like, well, it's not really that I wanted to. It's kind of that we have to. So with the exception of Romansh, all the other ones, kind of, I had to learn them. So
yeah, exactly.
It's always interesting for people. But languages aside, thank you for being here, Sarah. So I said that you are a LinkedIn expert and you help people get clients on LinkedIn. Before we dive into the content of the episode, and I thought it would be interesting to ask about LinkedIn since it's a topic that we haven't covered on the podcast for, I guess, well over a year now. Before we do that, can you take a moment to put yourself on the map in case there is somebody joining us who has no idea who Sarah Santacroce is?
Yeah, so as you said in the intro, it was a very interesting intro because usually I'm either the LinkedIn expert or I'm the introverted online business entrepreneur. And so you kind of put the two things together.
Right.
And that's who I am. It's just that usually in the LinkedIn business, I don't necessarily say I'm an introvert, where, on the introverted business that's my selling point. So I have these both businesses, and I work with clients on the LinkedIn side to get clients on LinkedIn, and I help them with their LinkedIn profile, with social selling. How do you get clients on LinkedIn? So that's pretty much me in a nutshell. And as we've already covered, I'm Swiss, 100%, even though some people, get confused by my accent. I'm a copycat, so I copy my husband's accent, who, yes, has an Italian name, but he grew up in Canada, so he's actually Canadian-Italian. So that's me in a nutshell.
All right. Thank you for that. So you really are international. I mean, not only for the languages you speak, but you also have this connection with Canada through your husband, which I think is pretty cool. And Canada and Toronto, more specifically, in my case, are a country and a city that I really love. And you said, Sarah, that you wear different hats because you said you're an introvert, you're a LinkedIn expert. And before we dive into the LinkedIn side of things, I'm curious, Sarah, what would you say, or actually, let me rephrase, what is your definition of an introvert entrepreneur?
Very good question. So an introvert, the way we usually describe it is, because sometimes people say, well, I don't know if I'm an introvert or I'm an extrovert, so I could be both. So usually you know which one you are by looking at where you get your energy. So if you are an extrovert, usually you get your energy by being around other people, by talking to people, by exchanging ideas with other people, and you need people around you. If you're an introvert, you like people as well. Doesn't mean, like, people usually confuse introverts with being shy. I'm not a shy person, but I get tired of being all day long with people. So that's something that exhausts me, and I need my space, my quiet moments to regain my energy. So that's usually how you define introverts and extroverts. Introverts need alone time to recharge their batteries.
I love it. Thank you so much. So you heard it. Sarah just explained. So as if you were wondering whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, I guess that now that's pretty clear which side of the fence you fall on. And the first question I have to ask you, Sarah, when it comes to LinkedIn, I know we have to start probably from the profile. And I know that LinkedIn can be a powerful platform for many different reasons. And actually, let me take a step back. Before we talk about the profile, in case there is somebody here who's joining us, Sarah, and he or she is thinking, well, LinkedIn, well, I'm not sure. What would you say? What can LinkedIn as a platform do for businessmen and businesswomen?
I think the first thing that we need to address is that oftentimes people still think that LinkedIn is just a place to go when you need a job. So when you're looking for a new job. And that's how LinkedIn started in 2003. But it's now much more than that. So it's a platform where you really get access to entrepreneurs, to small business owners, to decision makers, to podcasters. And it's not just for people who are looking for jobs. It's for people who are offering services to other businesses. And I think that's the most common kind of misconception about LinkedIn, is that people think it's either just for big corporations or it's for job seekers. And it's a no to both of those questions, or at least not only. It's really now a big platform for entrepreneurs as well.
Awesome. I love the fact that you talked about that, because I think you're right. Many people are still seeing that as a platform, as a sort of online CV, or a platform that is just for trying to find a work. But it is very powerful also for people who run their own business, entrepreneurs, as you said, decision makers, and things like that. So what would you say LinkedIn can do for entrepreneurs in terms of, actually, let me rephrase. Why do you think entrepreneurs should include LinkedIn into their business strategy?
I think the first question to answer yourself is to figure out if your target audience is on LinkedIn. That's the most important thing, because if you're, for example, if you're in a jewelry business, you make your own jewelry, well, probably your target audience might be on LinkedIn, but that's not where they're going to buy jewelry, right? You're much better off spending time on Facebook. But if your target audience is someone who is another business owner, who is a decision maker in a bigger company, a small business owner. So the first thing is to really analyze, is my target audience on LinkedIn? And then if you have that figured out, then it's time to, be on LinkedIn, be active, be visible. And there's two reasons for that. The first reason being that if your target audience is already on LinkedIn, they are using LinkedIn to connect, to grow their business, to, self-development, to find service providers within LinkedIn. So that's the first reason. And the second reason is Google, because if you, we all know that people Google our names, and then LinkedIn is often, the LinkedIn profile is often the first link that shows up. Maybe if you have done a good job on SEO, if you've done a good job for SEO, then hopefully your website will show up first.
Right.
But otherwise, definitely your LinkedIn profile. So that's why what you said before about the online CV. Well, as a business owner, your LinkedIn profile needs to be much more than just an online CV, because you're not looking for a job, you're looking for clients. So it really needs to be a place where people can find out about your services. And also, often what I see on profiles is that there's no further step. So a LinkedIn profile needs to be a gateway to find out more about your business. So there need to be links to your website. There need to be downloads. There need to be videos. And so it's much more than an online CV.
Oh, I like what you just shared there, Sarah, because, well, first of all, you talked about the SEO power of LinkedIn. And I remember it's something that Melanie Dodero talked about when I interviewed her. I think it was something like episode 22, so well over a year ago, or even 2 years ago, maybe. And she also mentioned that, so you touched upon that, which is great. But your last point on how to go about our online presence on LinkedIn and our profile in particular, I love what you just said there. So we should think about our profile as a gateway, so as something that starts a potential conversation with people. And I've recently experienced the power of LinkedIn, where I've gotten a client because he said, I don't remember if he used the term podcasting expert or something like that on LinkedIn. And he said, you were the top result or among the top results. And he got in touch, and, it was pretty easy. So it definitely speaks to the power of LinkedIn. So when it comes to the profile, keeping in mind SEO, so the optimization side of things, as well as the gateway approach you just mentioned, what are some of the things we should think about and have on our profile to kind of have it optimized for searches and at the same time help people who land on our profile take the next step?
Yeah, so the first thing you just mentioned is the power of keywords on your LinkedIn profile. So people who are already on LinkedIn and use it as a search engine, which is what this person did when they found you, they used the keyword podcasting expert and you came up. Why? Because you have optimized your LinkedIn profile for those keywords. So that's the first thing you need to think about is, what kind of keywords do I want to show up for? So I work a lot with coaches and consultants, and the biggest mistake they could make is just use coach, for example, as their title, right? Or even consultant, or often they add senior consultant or experienced consultant. Well, that doesn't tell me anything about what it is you do and who you help. So you need to be much more specific with your keywords. because coach or consultant is just very vague and nobody's actually searching for that. So that's the first thing, is to optimize your LinkedIn profile for your keywords. The second thing is then to, just to this point, don't get too creative either. So yes, it's good to add more details, but don't get too creative where you kind of come up with your own titles that nobody else uses. It sounds funny, but a lot of people do that, where they call themselves soulful business coach, or, well, business coach is okay, but they add something that doesn't really help in terms of getting found for keywords. I give you an example. I had a coach, a career coach, who didn't want to call himself career coach, but wanted to call himself career advisor. Problem with that is nobody else is looking for a career advisor. The main term that everybody uses is career coach. So that's why you really need to somehow use the terms that other people would enter in the search. And so don't get too creative, because then nobody will search for those terms. So that's for the SEO and the keywords. And then the second thing is what do they actually see when they come to your LinkedIn profile is equally important. And as I already mentioned, it needs to be, I always refer to it as a mini website that leads traffic to your maxi website. So your LinkedIn profile almost needs to look like a small website with lots of links to your main website. So that's where this gateway comes in. It's like, okay, you've landed here. Don't just leave again. I want you to come and, first of all, read my LinkedIn profile, maybe connect with me. But a lot of times people are too shy to just connect with you. And so at least you want them to go over to your website and sign up to your newsletter or get your freebie. So those things need to be integrated as well in your LinkedIn profile. So you can add, references to your free downloads. You can add YouTube videos and PDFs and all kinds of visual things that make your LinkedIn profile stand out from the others.
Thank you for those tips, Sarah. And is it okay for you if in the show notes page, in addition to everything we are talking about, I link also to your LinkedIn profile too?
Of course, yeah, and people can definitely ask to connect with me, and maybe that's another tip that I can share on LinkedIn. It's a professional platform, right? And so that makes it a bit different in terms of connecting with other people on Twitter and Facebook. It's okay to just click on connect, and on LinkedIn, what I notice with my clients and my own experience. If you really want to get business out of LinkedIn, it's a very important first step that when you send out the invitation request, you actually send it with a personalized note.
Right.
So LinkedIn now with this new version has gotten much better about prompting us for adding a personalized note. So please do that. And when you connect with me, just say, hey, I listened to your podcast on Jan's podcast. So I'll be happy to connect with you.
Yeah, another great tip you share, Sarah. Yeah, that's funny because I was thinking about it as I was listening to you. I was thinking about, that now they've made it easier for people. I know that's something I've leveraged, I don't know for how long now, but it's definitely something that really stands out because for me personally, when I get a notification with the standard message, I would like to add you to my connections or whatever it says, I'm always a bit like, okay, this person didn't have 10 seconds to personalize it. So I'm always a bit like, whereas if I get one personalized, and it doesn't have to be super creative, right? It's enough to write one sentence or two, like you said, I just listened to your interview on Jan's podcast or something like that is more than enough.
Exactly, yeah. And I usually up till now, I didn't blame it on people because LinkedIn just didn't make it clear. Right. But now it actually does say, you get more engagement if you personalize. So I think hopefully more people will do it from now on.
Yeah, no more excuses now.
No more excuses, yeah.
Okay, I have two follow-up questions, Sarah, on both, on the profile, so on the optimization side of things and the getaway/mini website approach. So for the optimization, I know that there are different sections of LinkedIn, and you mentioned the importance of using terms, keywords that people would actually use in their searches. I know that there are different sections. So where would you recommend using our keyword or keywords?
Okay, so the most important part is the headline. Okay, but the LinkedIn search crawlers, they don't just look at the headline; they look at other sections as well. And the algorithm isn't very clear to where it's more important. But what we know is that the headline is super important. Then the summary. That's another thing that a lot of entrepreneurs underuse this potential of adding a summary. We have up to 2,000 characters where we can really go into details about who we help, how we help, our services and all of that. And the search engine crawls all that text. So that's why we want to use the 2,000 characters. So naturally we're using our keywords as well. So the headline, the summary, and then the experience titles as well. So in your experience sections, each experience section comes with a title. And in that title, it would be a big mistake to say owner at, for example, for my business, Simplicity, right? Because that means nothing. I could be the owner of a nail salon because people don't know, what Simplicity is. So again, I would use LinkedIn specialist or LinkedIn trainer. So in each experience section, it's important. And then the keyword section, I called it the keyword sections, but it's the skills sections. But what it really is, it's a keyword section, because in the skills section, it's the only time where we don't get free text, but we really only get to add skills, which is almost equal to keywords. So, your skills would be podcasting. Well, that's a keyword for you. That's what you want to show up for, right? So these are the most important sections, I would say, on the profile.
Okay, thank you for that. And again, if you're new to LinkedIn, make sure to check out the show notes page so that as you're listening to Sarah and I, you can look at her profile. I'll add a link to mine as well. And you can take a look at how she's organizing her profile. And Sarah, I have a confession to make. A while ago, I revamped my LinkedIn profile and I was actually looking at yours. So for example, a section that you just talked about that somehow I felt I got wrong after looking at yours was the summary section. So in the summary section, it was a lot about me, and now I changed it toward the prospect. So it says something, now I don't remember the top of my head, but it starts with something like, if you're interested in getting started with podcasting, blah, blah, blah. So I made it about the potential customer rather than about myself. Would you say that that's kind of an approach to have? So to think about the summary, a similar thing could be said for an about page, where we should make it about the people who are reading rather than about ourselves.
Exactly. Yeah, it's exactly the same approach as an about page. And maybe just as we're talking about this, just like you don't use the third person on an about page anymore, you never use the third person on a LinkedIn summary. But you still see a lot of those where, it starts with, Jan did this and this degree, and then he did this and this MBA, and it's like, falling asleep, right? So we don't really care. Another important fact about the summary is it has to be about the present. It shouldn't be about your past. So don't start about, your time at this and this corporation and all of that. What people want to know, if they look at your LinkedIn profile now, is what it is you do now and how you can help them.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good point. So start by focusing on, as Sarah said, right now. And Sarah, I know that LinkedIn is a platform that we can use not only as a getaway, but also to actually create content. I know they have the LinkedIn publishing platform, for example. So what are your thoughts on that? How can we utilize it, or should we even utilize it or not?
I definitely recommend my clients to publish content on the LinkedIn Pulse, definitely. So LinkedIn Pulse, or some people call it LinkedIn Publisher, is a platform that it's basically your own blog on LinkedIn. So sometimes people don't have their own blog. They don't want to deal with a WordPress website. Well, LinkedIn just gave you a blog. And not only did they give you a blog, they gave you an audience, because automatically whenever you publish something on LinkedIn, well, it gets shared with your LinkedIn audience, and it can go beyond that LinkedIn audience because it will be part of the LinkedIn Pulse library. And if people share it, they reach, it can really go viral. So it's a great platform to position yourself as an expert in your field within your audience, but also further than that with the LinkedIn audience in general.
Okay, Sarah, you said it. If somebody doesn't have a WordPress blog, doesn't want to get started with that, and one is using LinkedIn, can use LinkedIn Pulse / LinkedIn Publishing. And a question I have for you when it comes to that is, what is your take on republishing one's content on LinkedIn Pulse? So, for example, that's something I've started doing, where I may publish a post on my blog, and after a few days, I will post it on LinkedIn Pulse as well, because I'm thinking that's a brand new audience. Would you say that it's a useful approach to do something like that, or?
Yeah, definitely. I remember when LinkedIn Pulse first came out, there was big discussions from SEO experts, sharing the pros and cons. And in the end, everybody agreed that it didn't matter that you duplicate content on LinkedIn, as long as you publish it first on your own blog. You always want to publish it first there, and then not do the opposite, because LinkedIn's SEO power is higher than your blog. So otherwise, people might find it first on LinkedIn rather than your blog if they Google for it. But that being said, it's a very good strategy. What I would probably recommend to my clients is not to publish it straight, like only a few days after, because you also want to use that content that you have published on your blog and share it, just as a news update on LinkedIn.
Right.
So if you do that, and then straight away after you publish the same post on LinkedIn Pulse, well, people have already maybe seen it on your blog. So I usually tell them, come up with an editorial plan where you repost blogs from your blog post on LinkedIn Pulse, but 6 months later or something like that. So you would just repurpose older posts on the LinkedIn Pulse. And so this way people won't remember that they already read that on your blog.
Okay, actually, that's a very good point. Thank you for that, Sarah. And one thing that I've started doing is, because I was thinking about something similar to what you just said, so I think, well, if I post it on my blog and share it as a LinkedIn update, and then I publish it on LinkedIn Pulse, people who are my connections are going to be like, well, I've already seen this. So what I've started doing is, if I write a longer post, for example, I will break it down into parts, let's say even a 5-part guide, so that on LinkedIn Pulse, I will publish part 1, and then after some days or a week, part 2, and then part 3. So that somehow it gives me the feeling that I get to tap more often into a new audience without kind of promoting the same blog post over and over and over and over again, because I say, hey, here's part 1, and then here's part 2, here's part 3, and so forth.
Yeah, that's a good strategy as well. I think the only thing I would not do, and I know you're not doing this, but I've seen other people do it, is where they just say 2 lines. Here's my latest blog post,
Right.
And then a link to the blog post. So that's not what LinkedIn Publisher is for. It's really to share value directly within LinkedIn, so people don't necessarily want to always click over to your blog. So don't just give them a teaser, give them content. And then, of course, within that content, you can use links to your blog, but don't make it your main objective just to send people over to your blog.
Yeah, actually, that's a very good point. Also, because if that's a strategy one carries out, after a couple of times, people are going to be, well, this guy or this girl always just shares links. So whenever they see you have something new up, they're going to be like, well, I'm not even going to bother clicking on that. And another component of LinkedIn that I know can be quite powerful for different purposes are LinkedIn groups. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on LinkedIn group, Sarah, because I know that one can start his or her own LinkedIn group, but one can also join existing groups. So where would you say LinkedIn groups fit into a strategy?
Yeah, LinkedIn groups are. I kind of have this love-hate relationship with LinkedIn groups. There are some groups that are very, very well organized and well managed. Unfortunately, they're probably the minority of LinkedIn groups. But if you do find a good LinkedIn group, yes, it can definitely help you in order to get clients on LinkedIn. Just recently, just 2 weeks ago or so, LinkedIn finally stepped up and said, we still care about LinkedIn groups, because there was a lot of rumors going around that they're actually going to, just disable LinkedIn groups because it was never a priority. But now they came out and said, no, this is, long term. We're going to keep investing in LinkedIn groups. So I was very happy to hear that. And I have hopes that they will improve LinkedIn groups, because right now, the groups are great to find, other people, but they're not great if you are the one managing the group, because there's a lot of things that don't work, unfortunately, with LinkedIn groups, such as, for example, notifications. So I have many LinkedIn groups for my private programs, and you would think it'd be so easy because Facebook figured it out, how to notify you whenever somebody posts something there. Well, LinkedIn somehow can't figure it out. And so I never get notifications. And so there's a lot of things that don't work with LinkedIn groups. But in terms of using it as a strategy, it's a great place to find people who have a common interest. So think prospects. And one mistake that a lot of people make is that they only join groups. For example, a coach would only join coaches groups, right? Where other coaches hang out. Well, that's not where your clients are. So you really need to think, okay, which kind of groups would my clients be in? And those are the groups that you want to join.
Sarah, I'm really enjoying this conversation, and also your last point on leveraging groups. You said that if somebody wants to use LinkedIn as a platform to get clients, then one should keep the clients, or actually should always keep the clients at the back of the mind, also when it comes to groups. So think, okay, where are my prospects? In which groups? And then join those groups, and not only join groups where they are your peers, like you made the example of coaches. And when it comes to using LinkedIn, Sarah, as a platform to generate qualified business prospects, do you have any advice for us? I mean, I shared my example in terms of how I kind of accidentally got a prospect and then client from LinkedIn. But if we want to really use the platform as a business asset, do you have any tips, some things we can do?
Yeah, so what I use with my clients is the 4-step social selling strategy, and that we already talked about the profile. So that's always the first step. And people are kind of like, really, do I have to? But you have to, because it's just like a website. If you want to get more leads, from the internet, well, if your website sucks, you're not going to get any leads. And this is the same on LinkedIn. So the profile needs to be selling you as the entrepreneur. The second thing is the network. So you cannot expect any leads from LinkedIn if you only have a tiny network, let's say, under 500 connections. It is a bit more difficult to get any traction out of LinkedIn. So you need to focus on growing your network. And the third step is to add value. So you do that by sharing content. You do that by publishing content, which we just discussed with the LinkedIn Pulse. And then the fourth step is lead generation. And so lead generation is the step where you proactively go and search the LinkedIn database for prospects. Okay, so you first obviously need to know who your prospects are.
Right.
Sometimes when I work with clients, they tell me, "Oh, I could work with anybody." Like, yeah, well, that's going to be hard to find. So you need to know how to find these people on LinkedIn. And in order to do that, you need to think, well, what did they put in their LinkedIn headline, right? So is it small business owner? Is it executive coach? Is it podcasters? So that's what you need to first do your homework on. And then you can use either with the free account, you can just use the advanced search to go in there and search for prospects that fit that description. Or if you are a bit more advanced and you want to use LinkedIn really on a regular basis, you would take the Sales Navigator account. So that's a paid account. And there you can really add more criteria, first of all, to find these prospects. And then you can really follow them and make sure that you engage with them socially on LinkedIn. So it's a separate account where you can just focus in on your leads and make sure that you engage with them so you can build those relationships over time. So that's kind of the social selling approach and the lead generation. But even if you focus only on generating leads and adding these prospects, if you don't do the work on your profile, if you don't share and add value and do the work about positioning yourself as the go-to expert, then all the leads in the world are not going to do you much good. So that's why I focus heavily on also, adding value and publishing content and all of that.
Yeah, I think, Sarah, everything you talked about during this interview really comes full circle, because you started by talking about the SEO power of LinkedIn. We talked about the profile, and then now in the last part of this conversation, you shared the 4 steps, and the profile is there. And you said, even though many of your clients wouldn't like to focus on the profile still matters. And if we think about it, it makes sense. It is as if we land on somebody's website and we are looking for somebody who provides certain types of services, and their website doesn't tell us anything about them, or I don't know, the photos they have are really bad quality or pixelated, or they don't have any content or things like that. So I think, again, it's important, like you told us early on, Sarah, to think like a prospect. And I know that you have a couple of websites. So you have sarasantacroce.com, you have Simplicity Small Biz for the LinkedIn side of things. And there, I know that you also have an ebook where you share ingredients for the LinkedIn success recipe. Is it okay if I link to that in the show notes as well?
Yes, of course. Yeah, that's just my 10 ingredient recipe for LinkedIn success. So obviously it talks about the profile, but and covers some of the other points, but it's just a nice reminder of everything we talked about. So yes, please go ahead and link to that.
Great. Yeah, I think it's perfect to have as we work on our profile and we want to carry out the other steps of the LinkedIn strategy you share with us. I know you're on Twitter at Sarah Santacroce. And if somebody would like to connect with you, what would you say is the fastest way to do that? Is it Twitter, your site, LinkedIn?
It's definitely LinkedIn. So just reach out to me on LinkedIn and send me a personalized contact request, and I'll be happy to add you to my profile and we can exchange messages. That's another thing that people often don't kind of, they don't think of it. It's like,
Right.
oh yeah, you can also message each other. So yeah.
Great. So I'll link to that with everything else we covered in the show notes. And Sarah, thank you so much for your time, for your advice and expertise. And do you have any final words, any tips or something you would like to emphasize yet again?
I think it's really important to focus on relationships on LinkedIn. That's the first thing that you always have to keep in mind, is that you're not just adding numbers on LinkedIn. It's really about the relationships. And the other thing that we kind of talked about, but we didn't maybe spell it out, is that the sales cycle on LinkedIn is really much shorter. That's what you notice when this person just reached out to you, just by finding you on LinkedIn. It's because LinkedIn people, or people on LinkedIn, are in a business mindset.
Right.
So they are really there for business. So once they found you, they're happy with what they see on your profile. They're like, let's talk business. It's not, a lot of schmoozing anymore. It's like, let's go straight to business.
A lot of, what did you say, schmoozing?
Yes.
I love the word. Sarah, this has been a fun and very useful interview. Again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Jan. It was a pleasure.
And we are back. You heard what Sarah said. If you want LinkedIn to make a difference for you and your business, make sure to follow the 4 steps for social selling we touched upon during the interview. And in addition to that, check out the show notes page for today's episode. I mentioned that page earlier, janilunga.com/episode 221, because there you're going to find the links to everything Sarah and I have covered, including her freebie. So if you want to jumpstart your LinkedIn efforts, janilunga.com/episode 221 is the page you want to check out. This was the last episode for July. Next month in August, we have great topics coming up. We're going to talk about storytelling and sales. We're going to talk about podcast optimization, iTunes SEO. We're going to talk about PR, automation, organizing in-person events. So it's going to be a full, fun month here on the 360 Entrepreneur Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the 360 Entrepreneur Podcast. For more tips and tools, head over to www.janilunga.com.